Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we've got a special video. We're gonna take a trip down memory lane. We're gonna talk about old, forgotten bass lures that still catch fish, that'll put them in the boat for you when other lures won't. These are forgotten lures, but they're top baits, stuff that I grew up fishing. So let's dive into it. We'll see you there. Get in the boat. Heck yeah, another one. Nice fish. Here, buddy. Ooh, that's a big one. All right, guys. Our first bait is the finesse ribbon tail worm. Now, these are slider worms. They are tiny cutter worms. Whatever you want. The 5, 4, 6-inch variety ribbon tail worm. I cannot say enough about these types of worms. Growing up, these are the first bass baits that I fished, right? I remember the first truly big bass I caught. We had just moved to a new house that had a pond next door, right? And we didn't know what was in the pond. I had grown up fishing on Lake Cumberland. We'd always caught a lot of fish there. I had never done much pond fishing because the neighborhood that we used to live in had a small little creek, but it didn't have fish in it. We moved to this pond and we went down in there and we caught 70, 80 bluegill. I got tired of catching bluegill, so I got in my tackle box. One of these was in here from my grandpa's tackle box. I took it, I hooked it up, I threw it out there, and the first cast, something just slammed that worm. It got off. I don't know what it was, but I was like, man, something hit my worm, and my parents were like, ah, nothing hit your worm. What are you talking about that? Threw it back out there. A bass snapped my rod in half. I'm talking snapped my rod in half. My dad pulled the fish in with his bare hands on the line. It was probably about a 5.5 pound bass, right? Biggest bass that I had ever caught in my life. But these worms became a staple in my tackle box. Now, as I got older, I carried a different variety of worms and I got, past everything. But these worms still hold a special place in my heart and they catch a lot of fish. Matter of fact, I did a video earlier this year on small finesse ribbon tail worms, French fry worms. This bait flat out catches them, right? When Flynn and Merrick, my sons, learn to go fishing and they're fishing by themselves, this is one of the first baits I'm gonna throw on for them because it helps them to catch fish. It helps you learn to feel the bottom. It helps you learn to fish around cover. But this worm will straight up get bit. I love it in the 6-inch variety too. Colors, motor oil, classic color, blue flake. This is red with blue flake, plum, all those classic old Anzanese worms, right? A great bait to throw, a great way to catch them, right? But often overlooked now for bigger and better baits. But in a pinch, those 4 and 5-inch cutter worms, those 4 and 5-inch ribbon tail worms, they'll get it done, right? Second bait, the classic ribbon-tailed worm, right? The 10-inch ribbon-tailed worm. As I got older, I started throwing bigger worms, trying to target bigger fish. Where the smaller worm will catch you every fish in the pond, the bigger worm is gonna catch you the big one. Now, a lot of guys throw these on ledges, but this bait right here was one of my favorite baits to throw Texas rigged weightless, over the top of slop, over the top of muck. Remember being a bank fisherman growing up, I didn't have a boat. I couldn't get out everywhere I wanted to go. These baits are diverse. I love to throw these baits weightless over the top, right? Flynn has caught a ton of fish on weightless power worms that I've rigged for him just like this, straight reeling them over top of muck and slop. If there's a bunch of stuff on the bottom, let these baits settle. That big elongated tail right there has a action that bass love. I also remember my cousin taught me to cut these worms' tails off like that and use them as trailers on buzz baits. Man alive, the fish will hit that. So this has a special place in my heart, that classic long tail, right? 10-inch ribbon-tailed worm, another great option. But let's get away from the worms for a second. The third bait that I want to talk about is underappreciated. I haven't even seen one of these in years, is the frog-style shallow running crankbait. I cannot tell you how many bass I caught on a shallow frog-style crankbait, right? An old Rebel bait. This bait caught so many fish that I had to replace the eyes, repaint the frog, do a whole bunch of stuff. This bait will absolutely positively light them up, right? In a pond, on a weed line, on a weed edge. This is not weedless in any stretch of the imagination, but it is a different look for fish. I remember catching a ton of big bass on this in community ponds, right? There's a place in New Albany where I grew up called Community Park. I would take this lure down and fish it against the cattails in Community Park. Absolutely blast. Big fish. I would take this out to Buffalo Trace Park. Same thing. A lot of guys would go out there and throw different stuff. I would throw the frog and I would wind it along shade lines and let it pop up to the top. It would crank it down and then it looks like a frog swimming up and it barely breaches the surface. Those bass would come in and literally obliterate this frog, right? You can't find these anymore. These are hard to find, hard to come across. I have probably 5 or 6 that I saved from different tackle shops that I'm waiting to use. Flynn and Merrick are gonna learn how to fish crankbaits this year throwing this bait. If you ever see one of these laying around, pick it up. It is your friend, right? Great way to teach people how to crankbait fish with a visual representation of what it is, a visual way to power fish, right? That frog crankbait right there will absolutely positively get it done in different situations, right? Next up, an all-time classic, right? I never really had an appreciation for this bait, but this bait is a bait that's in every single person's tackle box. The original Rapala minnow. This bait is an absolute killer in the right circumstances. I never got an appreciation for this bait until I went to Minnesota and fished this bait. And I'm telling you what, we had 100 fish days on the original floating minnow, just twitching it along on top, pulling it down, letting it rise up on flats, on points, on weed lines and weed edges, anywhere that there is submergent vegetation that has 6 inches to a foot of water over top of it and bass are sitting down in it, this bait is the answer, right? This is a killer bait, a classic. It's literally in every person's tackle box when they're growing up. And then as we get too fancy, we forget about it, right? I love this blade in black and gold. I love it in perch. I love it in black and silver. Blueback is great. Matter of fact, I have an entire box of these right here. That's how much I believe in this lure. And it's a lure that I haven't fished a lot anymore. This whole tackle box in here, you got fire tigers, you got hot mustard, you've got, you know, the newer Husky jerk models. Man, I've got all kinds of baits in here. The bigger version of this, they're all baits that are classics. Everybody has them, yet not a lot of people remember to throw these baits in the right circumstances. Pre-spawn, shallow fish, this is a killer. Post-spawn, fish that are in a funk, bass are guarding fry, killer. Hot summer nights in the shallows, twiddling this along above submergent vegetation, some of the biggest blow-ups you'll ever see in your life. The original floating minnow, right? A classic bait. And then my next 2 baits, topwater baits, right? If you're a pond fisherman, you love topwater. If you're a boat fisherman, you love topwater. If you're a fisherman in general, you love topwater. One of the first topwater baits that I learned to fish on, actually in the creek, fishing smallmouth, is the Hedon Tiny Torpedo and the Hedon Torpedo. This bait right here, flat out, you throw it out, you wind it back, gets annihilated. Smallmouth will come unglued on this bait. I think everybody had one of these that looked like a frog, right? This bait right here has put hundreds of fish in the boat for me. It's still a producer, right? I still fish this bait on the pond. I still give this bait to my boys to fish because it is a chuck and wind bait. And as you get more skilled, then you can start to pause it, rip it, do all kinds of things that you would do with a different bait with this bait. But the point here is this is a forgotten lure that a lot of people don't throw. It's got a lot more popularity in the Northland than it does down south for some reason. But this bait is a straight up killer. Anywhere, shallow water, pond, stuff like that, this bait is going to get you a look that a lot of fish are not used to seeing. Remember, this is the original Choppo, the original topwater plug with that big chopping action on it, and it will straight up catch them, right? It will straight up catch them, and it's a bait that a lot of fish have not seen in a long time, which is another thing. Being different sometimes is good. It's a really good one. And finally, if you've done any night fishing at all, the Jitterbug is an absolute classic, right? Abergast Jitterbug. This is a small size one. I've had Jitterbugs all the way up to gigantic ones like that have got big bites for me. This is the only one I got left. I need to get more Jitterbugs. Obviously, I'm slacking here. But the Jitterbug is a fantastic way to give fish a look topwater that they haven't seen. If you fish at night, this is a bait that chugging along on the surface, boom, 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 like that, will absolutely get obliterated. I gave this to Caden to fish a night tournament a couple months ago, a bigger one, blasted him on it, right? Literally one of the best night fishing baits ever invented. One of the best ways to get a big disturbance on top from back in the day. The Jitterbug is a fantastic option. Give it a try. I like to put that feathered treble on the back, give it a little extra. It's a killer. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed taking a trip down memory lane. Hope you enjoyed some of those fish catches. Don't forget about bass lures that are in your boat. Always go through your boxes. Look at stuff you haven't fished in a while. Remember what it's like to catch fish on those baits. Remember where they worked. Chances are if it worked for you in the past years, it'll work again. And a lot of times fish have forgotten about baits. I'm really excited and really thrilled to throw this frog crankbait again. To throw these little worms and stuff that I haven't thrown in a long time again. One, it's just fun to catch fish on and remember when you did, but two, you can catch some really good fish on these baits, and they're baits that I have a lot of confidence in. But as we get fancy and, you know, as we go to different lures and different things, we feel like, you know, oh, we're going to catch them on the Alabama rig, or oh, we're going to catch them on the glide bait. I'm just as guilty as anybody else about that stuff, right? I've got all the newest fancy stuff. I got a boat full of it, and I'm going through and seeing what I want to do videos on, how I want to catch fish. And I found my old tackle bag, and I started looking through it as I'm doing that. And man, there's a lot of baits that we haven't fished anymore. But thanks for hanging out with us, guys. We hope you learned something today. If you liked us, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Let us know what you want to see us do in the comments. Hit that bell for us. Turn on those notifications. Support the channel, and we will make more content that helps you guys catch more fish. We'll see you out there.